Bobo Brazil was a wrestling legend, one of the first black superstars in the sport. But behind the fame, there's a story most people don't know, a story of struggle, controversy, and resilience, and a tragic death that shook the world. Let's get into it. Houston Harris, though you might know him by his ring name, Bobo Brazil was a true trailblazer, breaking down racial barriers in professional wrestling and paving the way for so many others in the sport. Bobo Brazil wasn't just any wrestler. He's considered one of the very first black stars in wrestling, making a name for himself at a time when segregation and racial discrimination were big obstacles. But he didn't let any of that hold him back. He was an icon, but they too have struggles and controversies, right? Let's get into them. Now, about that championship controversy, it was 1962 and Bobo was facing off against Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, a huge star at the time. During the match, Bobo accidentally caught Rogers with a low blow, a hit below the belt. Now, accidents happen in wrestling, but this one was a bit different. Bobo, being the sportsman he was, refused to accept the championship victory because of it. He felt it wasn't an honorable way to win. They had a rematch a few weeks later, and Rogers regained the title. This whole incident has been debated for years. Some wrestling historians believe it was a planned storyline. The idea was to test the waters, to see how audiences would react to a black champion. Remember, this was a time when racial prejudice was still very much alive. Others believe it was a genuine act of sportsmanship on Bobo's part. Either way, it shines a light on the challenges he faced and the barriers he was breaking down. But you know, it's easy to look back at wrestling legends like Bobo Brazil and just see the highlight reel, the packed arenas, the roaring crowds. No one even cares to see the racially discriminating side of it, unfortunately. Bobo was a pioneer, no doubt about it. But being a pioneer often means having to blaze a trail through some pretty rough territory. And for Bobo, that meant walking into a world where racism was still deeply entrenched. First up, let's talk about segregated audiences. In the early years of Bobo's career, especially in the southern U.S., black and white fans weren't allowed to sit together. Black fans often had to sit in separate, less desirable sections, sometimes with obstructed views. Then there were the travel restrictions. On the road, Bobo couldn't stay at just any hotel or eat at just any restaurant due to racial discrimination. While traveling was tough for all wrestlers, for Bobo, it was even harder because of these limitations. All of this was truly sad. Beyond the ring, Bobo had his personal struggles. He battled with drug and alcohol addiction for much of his life. It's a sad reality that many people, even successful ones, face these demons. These addictions unfortunately led to missed bookings, strained relationships, and financial difficulties. He'd sometimes disappear for periods, making promoters and fans worry. Talking about his financial troubles in detail, Bobo Brazil's wrestling journey kicked off in the early 1950s. By the 1960s, he was one of the biggest stars in wrestling, a top draw everywhere he went, including in the WWF, what we know today as WWE. At his peak, Bobo was reportedly earning thousands of dollars each week, which was huge back then. He headlined shows all across the country, going up against legends like Killer Kowalski and Freddie Blassie. This success allowed him to buy a house and provide well for his family, but things started to change in the 1970s and 80s. Wrestling's territory system, the regional promotions where wrestlers would move between different areas, began to fade as national promotions like WWF and WCW took over. This shift hit many wrestlers hard, and Bobo was no exception. The new wrestling landscape affected his bookings and his income. On top of that, Bobo faced personal struggles. There were missed chances that could have boosted his career even further. One big example, WrestleMania 3 in 1987. Bobo was reportedly offered a spot at this historic event, but due to health reasons, he couldn't participate. It would have been a huge payday and a chance to cement his legacy on wrestling's biggest stage. Bobo continued to wrestle into the 1990s, but as time went on, his health declined, and so did his finances. He eventually had to rely on the generosity of friends and fans to get by. Sadly, his life came to an end on January 20th, 1998, at the age of 73. In his prime, Bobo was a household name in wrestling. He broke down barriers as one of the first African-American wrestlers to headline major events and pave the way for future generations. But after decades in the ring, the wear and tear took a toll on his health. By the 1990s, Bobo was dealing with serious medical issues and struggled financially. In the years leading up to his death, Bobo's health had declined significantly. Friends and fans stepped in to help cover his medical bills, showing just how much he was loved and respected in the wrestling community. Despite his struggles, Bobo remained positive and grateful, often reflecting on the fans who supported him throughout his career. On January 20th, 1998, Bobo Brazil passed away due to complications from multiple health issues. The wrestling world mourned his loss, paying tribute to his legacy and remembering the mark he left on the industry. For many fans and wrestlers alike, Bobo wasn't just a superstar, he was a pioneer who broke down racial barriers and brought a new level of athleticism to the ring. Although he is gone, we cannot forget to relive his career. Houston Harris, later known as Bobo Brazil, was born on July 10th, 1924, in Little Rock, Arkansas. He didn't have an easy start. His dad passed away when he was just 7 years old, which led him to take on various odd jobs to help make ends meet. He worked on a local fruit farm, earning a humble 50 cents per container he packed. These experiences shaped his character, hardworking, resilient, and determined. Eventually, his family moved to East St. Louis, Illinois, and later to Benton Harbor, Michigan. It was here that he'd get his first taste of fame, but not as a wrestler just yet. Houston was a talented baseball player in the Negro Leagues, playing for a team called the House of David. But one day at a steel mill, he was spotted by someone who saw a wrestler in him, and that's where his journey began. Houston's introduction to wrestling came when he met Joe Savoldi, a professional wrestler who took him under his wing. Joe trained him, teaching him not only the techniques, but also the values to uphold in the ring. Joe believed in wrestling with honor, never taking shortcuts, and always respecting the fans. Originally, Joe gave him the wrestling name Bobo Brazil, the South American Giant. But in an unexpected twist, a promoter accidentally misprinted his name as Bobo instead of Boo Boo in an ad. And that's the name that stuck, Bobo Brazil, a name that would soon become iconic in the wrestling world. Now let's take a moment to understand the wrestling world Bobo entered. It was the late 1940s, a time when segregation was everywhere, including in wrestling. Black wrestlers were often limited to facing only other black wrestlers. But Bobo was different. His popularity soared. People loved watching him, and his appeal went beyond race. He was so popular, in fact, that promoters began to look past their racial prejudices, realizing they could make more money if he fought white wrestlers too. Bobo's success started to break down barriers in the South and beyond. In fact, his very first recorded match on March 29th, 1948, was against a white wrestler named Armand Myers. Bobo's honest, crowd-pleasing style, coupled with his powerful moves and iconic sequined cape, stitched by his wife, by the way, won him fans of all backgrounds. While Bobo's popularity grew, so did the challenges he faced. Fans loved him, but that didn't protect him from racial discrimination. African-American fans were often forced to sit in segregated sections with poor views of the ring. Bobo himself was denied entry to many restaurants and hotels due to his skin color. Still, he remained a hero for people of all backgrounds, especially African-American fans who saw him as a powerful figure breaking down boundaries. Bobo Brazil was involved in some historic matches, including one on October 9th, 1970 in Atlanta, where he and his partner El Mongol faced Mr. Ito and the Great Oda. This was the first racially mixed tag team match in Atlanta's history. Bobo also became a mentor to other wrestlers, including Coleman Rocky Johnson, father of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and even inspired boxer Joe Frazier. And he wasn't alone in his journey. His manager, James Dudley, who was the first African-American to manage a major arena in the United States, would enter the ring waving a towel as Bobo followed. It was a powerful image that thrilled fans and symbolized how far they'd come together. After a remarkable career that spanned nearly 5 decades, Bobo Brazil retired in 1993. His last official match was in Chicago against Kelly Kiniski, son of another of his rivals, Gene Kiniski. Bobo's influence in wrestling was undeniable, and in 1994 he was inducted into the WWF Hall of Fame by his longtime rival Ernie Ladd. The following year, Bobo returned the honor by inducting Ernie into the Hall of Fame. Outside the ring, Bobo was a family man with a wife and 6 children. He ran a restaurant called Bobo's Grill for over 20 years. His legacy continued through his son, Carl, who wrestled under the name Bobo Brazil Jr. Sadly, Bobo passed away on January 20th, 1998, after a series of strokes. Bobo Brazil wasn't just a wrestling legend. He was a trailblazer who shattered barriers, inspired countless fans, and paved the way for African-American wrestlers. His journey from humble beginnings to wrestling stardom is one of resilience, talent, and honor. To this day, Bobo Brazil's legacy lives on, both in the wrestling ring and in the hearts of fans around the world. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed learning about Bobo Brazil, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video for more wrestling stories. See you in the next one.